I'm Ariana Grande.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Erivo.
And you're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Visit bpn.fm to discover more.
Hello, I'm Jeffrey Seller, and I welcome you to the Theater Podcast with Alan Seals.
Hey everybody, welcome back to an all-new episode of the Theater Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Seals, and our guest is Jeffrey Seller, and he and I are coming at you from the heart of Times Square in the WelcomeToTimesSquare.com studio, where you can be a star for a day. Jeffrey Seller is a 5-time Tony Award-winning producer whose visionary work has forever changed the landscape of Broadway, and without him, we might not have shows like Rent and In the Heights, Hamilton, Avenue Q, and so many others in their form or at all that have just shaped our love of musical theater, mine specifically. And we get into that because, I mean, without him, he's made so much of what made me fall in love with theater. He's the man who cracked open the door for bold new voices. He's redefined access with that now famous ticket lottery. And he's even helped Broadway embrace storytelling in ways that were once unimaginable. And his new memoir that just came out, it's called Theater Kid, and it goes into his story about how a young dreamer from what was nicknamed Cardboard Village, because it was so poor that basically that's what the walls were made out of, in Oak Park, Michigan, and how he rose to be one of the most influential producers in theater history. I mean, this is a story of grit and heart and relentless belief in the power of musicals. This guy went and just begged Jonathan Larson to produce his musical, which turned into Tick, Tick, Boom. And then, of course, they produced Rent. And my gosh. So as always, find me online on social media. You can watch the video version of this podcast on Patreon or Spotify. And now, everybody, please enjoy this episode with producer extraordinaire Jeffrey Seller.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Today, we're joined by a 4-time Tony Award-winning producer whose name is behind some of the most culture-shifting musicals of our generation. From Rent to Avenue Q, In the Heights to Hamilton, his work has redefined what Broadway can be. He's the man who helped usher in a new era of storytelling, broke the mold with lottery ticket access, and continues to champion bold new voices on stage. I've respected this guy for so long. I'm so happy to have him with me here in the WelcomeToTimesSquare.com studio. His new memoir, Theater Kid, takes us back to where it all began and reveals just how far one kid from Oak Park, Michigan can go. Jeffrey Seller, welcome to the Theater Podcast.
Thank you, Alan. It's really great to be here in the middle of Times Square, a place I have been working since 1986.
Really? Well, okay, let's go back to the beginning then. And we're here to talk about your book, Theater Kid, and it's a memoir of, I mean, it's like where you've been and where you're going is the whole theme of this podcast. And you wrote a whole book about it. So when I was reading your book, it was fascinating to me. And there are so many stories I can't wait to dive into. But like, tell the origin story.
Well, sitting here in Times Square is so amazing because we're in 1501 Broadway. My office is in 1501 Broadway. For about 4 years, I had an office at 1515 Broadway, which is right next door. And for 20 years, I was at 145 West 45th Street, which is where the Museum of Broadway is. And then those first 3 years at the Weissler office, I was at 165 West 46th Street. You can see all 4 buildings I've ever worked on Broadway from where we're sitting right now. And that's kind of moving to me. But of course, that's not where it starts. It starts with Cardboard Village.
Mm-hmm. Oak Park.
It starts in Oak Park, Michigan, where my family was the unique Jewish family that was downwardly mobile at a time in the 1970s when most other families, Jewish or otherwise, were upwardly mobile. Mm-hmm. And we had to keep moving, and eventually we had to move to the poorest neighborhood in Oak Park that the kids called Cardboard Village because the houses were made of the tar shingles that are usually on the roof, but in our neighborhood they were on the sides, and the houses were like 800 square foot tar shingled buildings built on a concrete slab. They were cheap.
And there's no basement.
There was no basement. There was
protect
nowhere
from
to hide
hurricanes or
from
tornadoes.
the famous Midwest tornadoes.
Yeah.
I can't imagine, like, it's even today, I'm like, how does a kid get from Cardboard Village to Broadway? And that's why I wrote the book, to figure it out.
You wrote the book to figure it out. Okay, so at this point in your life, you're a seasoned individual. You've been around for a while. You're saying you've been in Times Square for decades now.
Yeah.
Like, but why write the book in order to figure out? You didn't want to just go on an ayahuasca retreat and meditate for a little bit?
Yeah, I'm not much into drugs. And I'm not much into God. I mean, I'm a Jewish atheist, and and I'm adopted.
Yeah.
And so I think I was beset with a series of challenges or variables in which I was going to have to figure out my own existential dilemma, which is, why am I here and how did I get here? How does an adoptee make sense of their life when they don't know where they come from? How does a gay kid make sense of his life? How does a poor Jewish kid make sense of his life? And for me, that was to write a book. And I didn't write it with a contract. I wrote it for myself. I had no idea what would happen. I just thought, I'm going to start writing. And I wrote this book. And I wrote it without regard to outcomes.
Mm-hmm. You wrote it for you, for your discovery.
I wrote it to figure out, why am I here, and what is the meaning of my 60 years on this earth so far? And I can't even believe I'm saying 60 years. It's like still surreal, but that's what I got. I'm 60 years old.
Would you call it a successful 60 years?
Do you know what?
I mean, you have changed the landscape of Broadway, full stop.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I'm not going to be coy. Yes, it's obviously been a successful 60 years, but my life is unlikely.
Tell me more.
My birth mother could have had an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
I could have wound up with a different family. It was an unlikely outcome that a kid who lives in Cardboard Village gets to New York and produces Rent. I should have become a lawyer or a journalist or a high school teacher. I would have been a really good high school teacher. That was the likely outcome. And you know, I'm always inspired by historians and by Hamilton because, of course, the United States of America is unlikely. Alexander Hamilton's outcome was unlikely. But my book is about my particular unlikely trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
And after I wrote it for me, I realized I'm writing this for theater kids everywhere. I'm writing this for the kid in Bloomington, Indiana, for the kid in Louisville, Kentucky, for the kid outside London who loves theater, who is asking, how can I make a difference in this world? And who often may also be feeling like an outsider, like they don't fit in. Mm-hmm. I like to think I wrote this for everybody who feels out and is trying to figure out a way to feel in, because I felt out so much.
Well, it makes sense for all the reasons you stated why you felt out, why you felt like an outsider, but what is it about theater? What was it about stage and production at that time that drew you in?
That's such a hard question, I think, for all of us, because is it in our DNA? Is it fate? What is it?
All the above.
And, you know, all I can say is this is what happened. I have two strong memories of seeing theater, both children's shows. Like I saw a bunch of high school kids at Oak Park High School make a brand new musical, a rock musical from Rumpelstiltskin called Rump. And I can still remember the melody of the title song. Everybody do the rump, rump, rump. Everybody do the rump, rump, rump. Like, that was so darn cool. I was like, I want to be part of that. And then I have a equally strong memory of seeing our Temple Israel Purim plays, in which they would juxtapose Purim against a movie or a Broadway musical or something. And I remember going to the Purim play, and this was being performed by 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. Mm-hmm. and just going, that looks so fun. How do they learn all those lines?
Yeah. That's what my kids say to me too. They're like, how does everyone remember all that?
I couldn't figure it out. So when I was in 4th grade and they announced in January that there were going to be auditions for the Purim play, I just said to my dad, will you take me to auditions? I guess I wanted to be part of it. And he said, get in the car. And I went and auditioned. I didn't know how to read lines with feelings. So I got in the chorus. And that year, what they did is they did this mashup of the story of Purim, which, for those listeners who don't know it, it's the story of Queen Esther, who's a hero from the Old Testament. And Queen Esther saves the Jews from the murderous, violent plans of Haman to kill them all. Haman is the villain. And we do that play every year in the same way Christians do the nativity pageant every year. Mm-hmm. And I'm in it, I'm in the chorus, but that year they juxtapose Purim and Queen Esther against South Pacific. So Queen Esther is singing to King Ahasuerus, I'm going to wash that man right out of my hair. And then the sailors, I was a sailor, I guess they thought there's nothing like a day may be too risque for 4th graders. So we sang from HMS Pinafore, we sail the ocean blue in our saucy ships of beauty. So I'm in the first play I've ever been in, and it is a mashup of Rodgers and Hammerstein, Gilbert and Sullivan, and the Old Testament, which we know to be very fertile territory for new musicals. Thank you, Andrew Lloyd Webber. And who wouldn't be hooked by that experience?
Yes. Wow. And then fast forward, you're following this path, and at some point, having to decide between what day job to have, if you want to be a performer, if you want to get into producing, like you knew you wanted to make a difference, as you were saying.
I became a big picture guy and aware of it very early. So if I could make 3 jumps, I'm in the Purim play. Next thing, I write a play. It stars my 2 best friends and me, and we take all these adventures through this perilous territory that's filled with danger and life-threatening problems, and Peter Pan saves us and flies us home. And after I write a play, then I am in community theater plays and in youth theater in 7th, 8th grade. And there is this moment in the 8th grade where I am in a play. I'm the Jack in the Box in a play called Popcorn Pete. It's called The Adventures of Popcorn Pete. And I make 3 observations as I'm in this play at age 13. 1, The Adventures of Popcorn Pete is a stupid title. 2, it's not very good. Like not enough conflict and danger and jeopardy transpires over the course of the 50 minutes of this play.
You're thinking about this during the play.
I am thinking about this every day.
Okay.
I'm thinking about this on the toilet. I'm thinking about this at meals. I'm thinking about it while I'd like to think I was in the moment when I was the Jack in the Box, but I'm thinking about it as I'm watching the meager audiences show up. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, bad title, bad play, meager audience. And I say, who gets to pick the play? And they say, well, that's the play reading committee. And I say, I want to be on the play reading committee. How many kids who are 13, 14 want to sit around on the weekend and read plays? Not many, as you and I know. So I now am reading plays at age 14. And then I'm typing the press releases and selling program ads to the local merchants and designing, because I could do a little bit of calligraphy, and designing the posters. So by 9th grade, I am marketing, raising money, picking plays.
Press.
I'm a producer, and I don't even really know what that word means. Mm-hmm. And of course, I still haven't started puberty, and I can't drive.
Did your parents and your family support all of this, or were they like, just let him do his own thing, get him out of the house?
Here was what was remarkable. My family was chaotic. My family, as I said earlier, was poor. Mm-hmm. My father was a failure in many ways as a provider. my mother had to work as a pharmacy technician clerk for $5 an hour so she could get our health insurance. And my parents fought all the time. I had a baby brother who was 6 months old, and someone had to take care of him. And yet through all of that chaos, anytime I said to my dad, can you take me to this audition? Will you take me to this rehearsal? You know what he said? Get in the car.
Wow.
They always said yes.
That's really beautiful, and says a lot about them at the core of realizing that that's who you are, or you were at that time, and that's what you needed to be a whole person.
They affirmed me.
Yeah.
In the most beautiful, loving ways.
And then there's also a Miss Shively.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's so sweet. You bring that up. When I was in sixth grade, we had music class, but there was also a boys' choir, and it would meet at 7:30 in the morning. And somehow I was able to get my best friend, Bruce Rosen, who was a total jock and was doing, he was involved with baseball, football, hockey, all of that. But he would go with me, and we were in the boys' choir. And that's where I learned, Get Me to the Church on Time by Lerner and Lowe. And that's where we sang There's Nothing Like a Dame. And then she would coach us for the Winter Pops concert. And they would pick 7 talent acts to go along with all of the choral numbers. And so I signed up to do an act, to audition with my best friend Bruce. And of course, I loved this number I used to see on the Brady Bunch called Together Wherever We Go. I didn't even know there was a show called Gypsy, by the way. I just knew that was the song that Carol Brady and Marsha Brady did at the Brady Bunch talent show. So Bruce and I are doing this, and the great Miss Shively is coaching us, and then we audition, and we get in, and we get to do our act in the great Pops concert, A Kaleidoscope of Color and Sound, January 1976. I still have the program. And while we're doing that, Miss Shively tells me that she is she's in a musical of Oliver at a place called Stagecrafters, and she's the flower seller singing Who Will Buy This Wonderful Morning. And I'm asking her I'm so there's kids, it's Oliver, is there a kid playing Oliver? And she's like, yeah, he's a regular kid. I said, how old is he? And she's like, your age. And I'm like, why aren't I playing Oliver? I want to play Oliver. And then the next spring, while we're working on our bicentennial concert, she tells me that she's the music director for this musical that I learned about called Gypsy. And I'm not in it or anything, but I learned that she's the music director. And I said to myself, well, I want to go join Stagecrafters. And then she says to me, well, you know what? We're going to do a 7th, 8th grade production of Oliver at the middle school next year. And all I looked forward to in the summer in between 6th and 7th grade was that we would do Oliver. And she said, you would be a good Artful Dodger. And when I came back for 7th grade, she was gone. She had moved. And so we never did Oliver. But I remembered Stagecrafters. So I picked up the phone and I called and I asked if they were having auditions, and they said yes. And I went, and my dad said, get in the car. And I went and auditioned for this kind of cheesy melodrama called Speaking of Murder. And I wound up one of the lead kid in this adult play I called Speaking of Murder. So Miss Shively gave me that gift in the 6th grade that I have been deeply, deeply thankful for ever since.
Were you ever able to connect with her again or reach out and just give
I've not been able to find her. I've not been able to find her over all these years.
Oh my goodness. To know what she has had a hand in creating and motivating you to create, my God.
It was certainly one of the most seminal moments of my life when she told me about Stagecrafters, and I picked up the phone and called them.
So this was in Oak Park. Do you remember her first name? Maybe we can put the call out.
Of course, I remember. Her name was Peggy Shively.
Peggy Shively from Oak Park.
Well, she wasn't from Oak Park. She lived, I think she probably lived in Troy or something. But yeah, Southeast Michigan.
Southeast Michigan.
She was a teacher at Oak Park, at Frost Middle School at Oak Park, Michigan.
Peggy, email into the podcast. We want to get you connected with Jeffrey because, good God, you've helped create some of the biggest productions that we've seen. And then don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the episode. Okay, at some point, you're doing all this, going through high school, and then you're like, okay, I got to go to New York because New York is logically the next place for me to live.
It's the only place to go. We could, jump forward. So now I'm at University of Michigan. My best friend is Andrew Lippa. I say to Andrew at some point, you like musicals, you know how to play piano, you should start writing musicals. So Andrew and I start writing a musical, and I'm a drama teacher for campers at Camp Tamarack in Southeast Michigan, which is the Jewish Federation camp, and I'm directing shows. And then I'm directing Grease for Muscat at Michigan, and I'm directing Anything Goes for Ann Arbor Civic Theater, and I'm doing children's theater. So I'm doing a ton of theater. I'm also writing about theater for the Michigan Daily and the Ann Arbor News. And as I'm at Michigan, somewhere around sophomore year, someone hands me Hal Prince's book, Contradictions, that he wrote in the mid-'70s. And I start to and of course, I'm a total obsessive about Evita, which I just think is the greatest thing ever. And of course, it's Hal's remarkable production. And as I'm learning about Hal in college, I'm like, oh, I want to be a producer-director. And how the heck am I going to get from Oak Park, Michigan and Ann Arbor to New York? I don't know anybody in New York. I don't know. Well, my one of my roommates, Nancy Haas, is from Sheepshead Bay, but she just lives in, she grew up in Sheepshead Bay. And I don't know anyone in New York. And I have no money, of course. So how am I going to get from Ann Arbor to New York? And you're not going to get a job as a producer. You're not going to get a job as a director. And when I graduate from Michigan, I'm in despair because I'm like, what am I going to do now? How am I going to do it? Take a breath, Jeffrey. As I'm telling you this, I'm starting to feel that anxiety again.
Really?
But I thought, okay, be logical. You're a good writer. You can write articles. You wrote press releases. You wrote reviews for the Michigan Daily. You wrote features for the Ann Arbor News. Get a job in publicity. So I literally just start writing cover letters to every publicity firm in New York. And by the way, not really theater firms, because they were not part of public relations. You have to keep in mind, it's 1986. The Broadway world is very sequestered. There's no playbill.com.
Mm-hmm. There's no real internet yet publicly at that point.
There is no internet. Zero. No, of course not. So how do you even know about it? But anyway, I got my first job at a publicity agency that did some television and did a little bit of theater. They did the PepsiCo Summer Fair Theater Festival up in Purchase, New York. And that was how I got that first job, $14,500. They paid my health insurance. And I took home $205 a week. So that's $820 a month. And my rent on Prospect Place in Brooklyn, just on the Prospect Heights side of Flatbush Avenue, was $380. So basically, I had $440 a month to live on, which is $100 a week. I had $100 a week. However, subtract out, I had to pay $120 a month for my loans. So I had $90 a week.
Yeah.
And if I was lucky, at the end of the week, I had enough money to go to TKTS and get a half-price ticket to a show, and then maybe go to Hamburger Harry's and get a burger, because you could eat at Hamburger Harry's probably for about $5. And that's how that's how I get to New York. And so when people say, "How did you do it?" You know what the answer is? So logical. One rung at a time.
Rung
on a ladder.
Yeah. I thought you said wrong,
yeah,
which would also make sense.
R-U-N-G, right? Isn't that the word? Yeah. You just keep climbing that ladder one rung at a time. And 1 year later, I got a job working for the Weislers.
Wow.
And started being a booker. And while I'm working for the Weislers and I'm a booker, I'm doing shows at night with my friends. And that's when, of course, I meet Jonathan Larson.
It was just chance encounter?
Well, yeah, my friend Beth Emelson, who was Barry's assistant, says, I'm going to go see my friend's rock monologue tonight. And I'm looking at a flyer that says Boho Days, a rock monologue by Jonathan Larson. And I'm like, rock monologue? First of all, I've never seen those two words put next to each other before, rock and monologue. So I'm like, that sounds so cool. So Beth and I go up to the second floor theater where it's having its first ever performance. And there's a piano on stage, bass, drums, guitar. And out comes this lanky, tall, curly-haired guy, and he sits at the piano and attacks. He's ferocious. And he's telling a story, the story of him turning 30 and feeling this clock tick, tick, boom, that he's afraid he's going to explode because he is a 30-year-old composer of rock musicals that nobody wants to produce, because he is sick and tired of his job serving brunch on Sundays at the Moondance Diner as a waiter, because he is asking himself, do I stay with my girlfriend who I know is not the right person for me, but at least I feel safe? Or do I have the courage to break up? Do I keep writing these rock musicals that nobody wants to produce, or should I take this job I'm being offered as a copywriter at an advertising agency? And he's telling this story with the most incredible songs that make the hair on my arms stand up, that make me cry, that make me cheer. And it was like a cascade of feeling. So anyway, I wrote him I'm good at letters. I thought, I'm kind of shy. I wrote him a letter the next day saying, I want to produce your musicals.
Literally just, that was it.
Well, it was a longer letter. It was a really good letter. But I mean, I talked about how much I was blown away by Boho Days. I gave him another idea for another new musical. I told him who I was and what I do, and said, I realize I'm nobody, but hey, it's hard to get stuff done. So if you ever are interested in talking, give me a call.
Wow. You saw the first ever production of what became Tick, Tick, Boom. And then definitely the reason Rent exists in its current form and changed the landscape.
Oh, well, I gave Jonathan two big suggestions about Boho Days. One is I said, change the title to Tick, Tick, Boom, because that's the motif you keep repeating in the show over and over.
You're wow.
Two is I said the opening number, Boho Days, is no good. So you need to write a new opening number. And he wrote 3090, which is pretty damn great.
I agree.
Number. And that was all about turning 30 in 1990.
Holy shit, dude.
But by the way, I tried to produce Tick, Tick, Boom in 1990. Actually, it was 91, 92. And I couldn't raise the money. People were like, why should I invest in a musical about a 30-year-old who's upset that he's not successful yet? Like, woe is me.
Which I'm sure the investors were much older than 30.
When you're much older than 30 and you got 30-year-olds complaining that they haven't done anything yet,
right.
you're not that sympathetic.
Right. Well, then, so Tick, Tick, Boom.
But I love that you said that yes, Tick, Tick, Boom becomes the preparation for Rent. Mm-hmm. Every theme in Tick, Tick, Boom, every theme that I said shows up in Rent. Relationship, job, being true to yourself, asking, do I have what it takes to be an artist? And every theme in Tick, Tick, Boom shows up in Rent. And
you've never had any formal playwright, like story writing training or anything? This is just like what you've pulled out of observation and life experience of putting, like, why would I, Jeffrey, want to just watch this? Why do I care about your production, your story?
Well, I want to say two things. One is I only produce what moves me physically. And I hope that if I am moved, if I am thrilled, if I am crying, if I'm inspired, then the audience will be too. Mm-hmm. I hope that what pleases me will please the audience. I have no idea what will please the audience. I only know what will please me. And then my second answer to that question is that you said, no, of course, I didn't study dramatic criticism, though I studied a lot of theater, but I started reading those plays in 8th grade. I read a lot of plays beginning when I was 14 years old. Right. And you know what? You read a lot of plays, and then you get to 10th grade and you study O'Neill, which we did, The Hairy Ape, and you study The Glass Menagerie, which we did, and you study Death of a Salesman, which we did all those things in my American Literature 2 class. We were studying plays.
It's one thing, though, to read a good story and then internalize it and say, I like this. This kept me entertained. That story over there, not so much. This one over here, yeah, I'd read it again. And then there's the extra level of understanding why. Because you can still enjoy something and then, like, I'll internalize it and be like, oh, that was cool. You know, like, I liked how that actor played it, or I liked this part or that element of the story. But to come out and a lot of people will leave something and say, like, yeah, it was okay. But they never have the forethought or the what's the word I'm looking for? The awareness to analyze it and say, what would make it better? What would make me love this? Change from like to love, right? And you not only can see that, you can communicate it to the people who can implement it, and then you put it on stage and everybody loves it. So you're like this magic glue.
I love your summation, and it's a lot harder than that. But yes, I mean, and you're going straight back to me being that Jack in the Box and Popcorn Pete and going, this play isn't good enough. There isn't enough conflict.
Yeah.
I'm asking, what is the conflict and the rising tension before anyone has taught me the 5-act Shakespeare structure? But by the time I learned that in a theater history class in college, I'm like, oh.
Right. Oh, that makes sense.
I kind of knew it before I knew it.
Right.
Because I was like, why is this? Where's the conflict?
Right.
What is the plot?
So, as you said, putting something on stage, if you like it, it's a great story. It's got all these great characters. That's half of it. The other half is getting people to know about it and to put it on stage. So that's the technical part of it. And is that what you learned from the other jobs you had previously, or did you just kind of dive in? Because something I wanted to come back to was you like, oh, how did you do it? Yeah, you find the next rung. But when the ladder is not straight, you're jumping all over the place.
Yeah, well, of course, the ladder to get Rent from Jonathan's idea to Broadway was anything but straight.
Right.
It was a series of failures and successes. It was a step forward, maybe 2 steps back, or 2 steps forward and 1 step back. It was a lot of trial and error.
Well, how do you know what even to try? Because if you've never done something, like I've always wanted to say, yeah, I'll produce something, I'll put something, and I'll make the next Hamilton, I'll make the next Rent, whatever. I just need to find a good story, right? But then there's more productions than we have open theaters here in New York. There's the stigma of opening something, like if it doesn't go to Broadway, it's, I'll put in quotes, not good enough. Like there's all of these business aspects to it. So aside from the story, which you're diving into the story and the people and the creative team, and you believe in it, and it makes your hair stand up and on your arms, and that's great. But then the business side of it, where do you know where to try to fail?
I think that being a booker at the Weissler office taught me so much about the business. Watching the Weisslers produce Cabaret, starring Joel Grey, and Topol, and Fiddler on the Roof, and Macbeth with Christopher Plummer and Glenda Jackson. I watched a lot of production, and I learned everything I could from it. And I certainly learned as a booker exactly how the road works and how to tour all over America, which put me in a position to know exactly what to do once Rent exploded on Broadway in terms of our touring. And frankly, Rent winds up touring for about 18 of the next 25 years.
Yeah.
I mean, our last tour closed about 2 years ago. So getting the nuts and bolts of getting a show on, that's the easy part. Discovering a composer, lyricist, book writer, director team, who together make something in which the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That's the miracle.
Yeah.
Getting it to Broadway is easy if you've got the miracle.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the episode. As somebody who would love to be in a producerial role of bringing these stories to the masses, and that's part of why I do the podcast. I want to bring stories to the kid in the Midwest who may not ever make it to Broadway or doesn't think that they can because they're like, oh, I keep failing, I'll never make it. But then you hear amazing people who have done amazing things who started out doing nothing but failing. And it just keeps going. But anyway, so I'm sitting here thinking about all this and just, I guess, yeah, you said you have to find that miracle. What makes you stand up? So when you were contemplating, I know, and you talk about this in the book, contemplating like staying as a job at a booker and working where you were working. And then you were on the phone with Jonathan, I think, when you got the call that you got fired as a booker. And then that's what made you jump into full-time producing?
Well, it wasn't that linear, but it is true that if we can go back to a little bit earlier in our interview, I said to you, I wrote this letter to Jonathan saying I want to produce your shows.
Yeah.
Okay. And, that's a moment in my life. It's the fall of 90. I'm so frustrated. I don't want to be a booker anymore. I really want to be a producer, but there's no way to make a living as a producer. I'm frustrated in my job. I'm not satisfied. I've just broken up from a 6-year relationship. I'm lonely. I'm wondering if I'll ever find someone. And I have to pay the bills.
You are Jonathan Larson.
And I'm saying, well, how is this man telling my story? Yeah. He's never met me. Right. But in any event, so it's the fall of 90. It's sorry to bore you with my memory, but it's the day after my birthday. Okay. So I've just turned 26 I've just turned 26 day after my birthday. I'm in the conference room at the Weissler office and I'm eating my carrots and, my boss comes in with an envelope, one of those, simple business envelopes in her hand. I see the envelope. I'm like, uh-oh. And she sits down and says, we have to talk. And she says, you don't want this job anymore. You don't really want to be a booker. You want to be a producer. You got to go off on your own. You're fired. Or, it's time for you to go. And I'm like, oh, so shit. Like, and my heart is sinking and I am immediately sweating and vibrating because I'm like, how am I going to pay my student loans? How am I going to pay my rent? I have no money. What am I going to do? I'm going to be a homeless person. And as she's firing me, we used to have these all intercom where they could intercom the whole office because if they can't find you in your office, they're looking for you everywhere. So the all intercom goes on and the receptionist goes, Jeffrey Seller, Jonathan Larson on line 3. And all I could do was go, oh my God. And then say, take a message because I can't interrupt the process of getting fired. So I say, well, take a message. And I get his phone number and I go home and I call him and I tell him what just happened. He says, how are you? And I'm like, well, I just got fired. And he said, well, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I said, well, if I believe anything in your play, it's got to be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beginning of my 5.5-year relationship with Jonathan that culminates in Reddit.
Wow, I didn't realize that was the first time he had called you.
That's it.
That's insanely cool. And 5.5 years, get Rent where it is and where it continues to be. Did you have to convince him at all to work with you? Or was this first conversation?
Nobody wanted to produce his musicals. He was a 30-year-old composer of rock musicals. No, if anybody did, he would have, because I was nobody. We won by default.
Right. Okay. And so you've lost your connection with the Weisslers. You're literally like no money. Then what was your next step? What was the next rung you went to?
Well, that's an important lesson for young theater makers. You need a job. And so after I was fired from the Weisslers, that's when I teamed up with 2 terrific men, Paul Blake, who was a producer, and he ran the St. Louis Muni, and he would produce shows for the road. and Kevin McCollum, who was his assistant or was his executive producer. And they wanted a booker. And because they were making shows that they thought could tour. So I started working with Paul and Kevin in January of 91. And then ultimately Kevin bought out Paul. Kevin and I became 50-50 partners. And Kevin and I, with his moxie and my expertise in booking, because I didn't like it, but I was really good at it.
That stinks. It stinks when you're in that position.
And I knew I had to do it because I had to pay that student loan every month. Had to pay that rent. So we started this company called the Booking Office. And within a couple of years, we were making a living. We were not making a killing, but we were making a living. And it was while we were running the Booking Office that Jonathan was developing Rent. And then we were able to help him because we had enough cash in the Booking Office that when Jonathan needed to make a cassette recording of all the songs after the workshop in 94, we could give him that money.
Insane. Or I feel like we could just deep dive on Rent forever, but I want to keep going because Rent blows up. Things are great. Kevin obviously has turned into a wonderful producer in his own right as well. And so the two of you are continuing. How do you continue to work together? When does In the Heights come into the picture?
Kevin and I
meet Lynn? Lynn's just some kid.
Kevin and I become business partners, friends, brothers, and we do together Rent, De La Guarda, Avenue Q, In the Heights, the West Side Story with Spanish language that Arthur Lawrence directs, other things. We have an amazing 20-year partnership. And it was in the end of 2011 that I was like now in my late 40s. I was like, I want to ride the bike myself. I don't want to ride in tandem anymore. And we'll see what happens. And I was like, if I'm going to do it, now's the time because I figured I'm about midway through my career.
Sure.
So that's when we both parted. He continued producing. I continued producing. And arguably, it's been better for Broadway because now there's, I guess, more stuff. And that's just an example of how we have to check in with ourselves and honor ourselves and say, where am I?
Was that scary?
Yes. Of course it's scary. Of course it was scary. But I just decided I want to be the CEO. I want to make the final decisions. And I'm willing to live with the consequences. Positive, negative. Hit, flop, success, failure.
That's crazy cool. That is so cool. And how do you decide what to work on now? Because, or even then, when you're building on the success of Rent, and people at that time were like, "This is never going to make it. It's not cool," and then it explodes. And then, so you're writing this.
By the way, they said the same thing about Avenue Q and In the Heights.
Yes,
they're never going to make it,
and probably Hamilton too, right?
Less because. Less. But I will say, all three of those shows, first of all, as we said, Kevin and I got to produce Rent because nobody wanted to. And then Avenue Q, even after we opened off Broadway, they were like, puppets on Broadway? They're out of their minds. They're out of their fucking minds.
Right.
And In the Heights, okay, so they did this show off Broadway. They're only doing 60% business, and they think they're going to do that show on Broadway? They're out of their minds. All three won the Tony.
Right. Well, but what makes you believe in this? Is it literally just you are too stubborn to listen to other people? Are you?
I don't know what they're talking about. And by the way, I'm not saying I do either, but I'm saying one thing. I listen to myself. And when Kevin and I were standing in the back of the Vineyard Theater and watching those puppets and watching that audience, we came away, along with our partner, Robin Goodman, with a point of view. And that was these puppets and this show, it has big themes. What am I going to do with my life? This will play on Broadway. And also, we were at the back of the Vineyard Theater and we were going, you know what? Can puppets play on Broadway? Because are you going to be able to see them in the back? And it turns out puppets, the size of our puppets, their heads were almost as big as a human head, but they're all felt. meaning that they're all primary colors. They're simple. They're easier to read in the back of the balcony than a human face. Their eyes are bigger than yours.
I was just thinking about
their mouth is bigger than yours.
I'm thinking about the four big ones we keep mentioning: Avenue Q, Rent, Hamilton, and In the Heights. They're all existential. What do I do with my life? Plays or musicals.
And how do we start this conversation? Me saying,
exactly.
He's like, why'd you write a book? Because that's an existential question. What am I doing with my life? I've been asking this my whole life because I don't believe in a reunion in heaven. So if I don't figure it out now, I'm screwed.
So you and Kate Monster.
God is not waiting for me at the gates.
Kate Monster is. Yeah.
God bless her.
That's so cool. You listen to yourself, you listen to what speaks to you, and I feel like you're not alone. It's now in your so many years of producing and creating and hearing audience feedback and watching the audience watch your shows. Do you have a sense now that boy you were when you felt othered, when you felt alone, is not? It wasn't true. You have a family. You have you came to the entertainment, the industry, and are telling the stories so that everyone who feels alone actually is all together. They're not alone. We're not alone. Like, you're doing this because it speaks to everybody that you wanted to talk to in the Midwest, these kids that feel othered.
Thank you. Because you just nailed it, which is, guess what? I don't feel like I'm outside anymore.
Good.
I feel like I'm inside. And I have watched how these shows have made so many people feel inside instead of outside. And I think that's the greatest achievement of all.
I binged the Rent album for years. Same thing. Just feeling like an outsider, feeling weird and different. And that show, that music and the story behind the music. It wasn't just the story. It was the actual melodies, the composition, the arrangements spoke to me in a way that no other show ever had before.
Yes.
And I'm going to spoil this for you. At the end of every episode, I ask what show, if you could only see one show for the rest of your life, what show would you see? And people have asked me every now and then what my answer is, and it's always Rent. Because that was the show that got me to love who I am, where I am in life at that moment, and has put us together right now. So thank you.
That's very moving to me.
Thank you. Has your choice of what to work on changed now that you don't feel othered anymore? So do you now look for things that are slightly different, or are you still looking for that kind of existential crisis in the work that you're producing now?
The ability to analyze what I am looking for is based on our ability to look backwards and then find the commonalities between those four shows. And then, by the way, they all take place in New York.
Mm-hmm.
So we look in retro. I didn't come to New York and go, oh, I want to do musicals about what am I going to do with my life?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know. I just know that's what came to me, because here's a very important distinction. I don't say, okay, we're going to make a musical out of X. I, for the most part, have received ideas from artists who have a musical they want to do. And then I see if they surprise me, inspire me, prick my ear in a whole new way. So I say, hey, I've never heard it sound like that before. So in those ways, I follow, because my job is to harness the power of the artist and their ideas.
Whew, that's heavy. My God, I wish we had another 3 days to dive into this. I could talk to you forever. But we are coming up on the end of our time together. So unfortunately, or fortunately, have to switch over to Plot in 60 Seconds. We've got 60 seconds here on the screen in front of you. Just a fun little game. We like to end on a high note here. So I have 17, I just added one the other day, 17 popular musicals in front of me. And I'll tell you what show you picked.
Great. 3.
3 is Company. Go.
60 seconds remaining.
Company is about a guy named Bobby who's single, who doesn't know how to forge a relationship with a woman, who has many friends, many couple friends.
45 seconds
remaining. And he loves them all and they all love him. But here's the deal. All of them have fucked up marriages. So he's asking himself, why should I go emulate what you do? None of you are happy. Only to discover at the end that it's better to be with someone than not.
Remaining.
Because we're all, the greatest song on the show. Sorry, grateful. We're sorry that we fight, but we're grateful we're together. Being alive.
15
Being
seconds
alive.
remaining.
I love that answer. That was on point. Well done.
I get an A in musical theater history.
Well done. All right. 3 questions I ask everyone to wrap up. The first one is just simply what motivates you.
Making things. I always want to make one more thing.
If you could give advice to your younger self and younger people listening now, starting out down a similar path, what would you say?
It's going to be okay. Just take another step. Just put one foot in front of the other. If you're doing yoga, do the next pose. If you're running a marathon, run the next mile. Just keep going.
What is it from Frozen 2? Do the next best thing? The next best step? What is she saying? I don't know.
I saw Frozen 2, but I can't name that. So.
Okay. And then the last question, I already told you this was coming. If you could only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, what would you see?
Oh, that's such a hard question. But I'm going to have to go with the Chorus Line because that was the first show I ever fell in love with. And for Chorus Line is to me what Rent was to you. And you know what's interesting? What's the next musical that shows who we are, where we are today in a vernacular that sounds a little bit like today in a contemporary musical? Meaning, what's the next contemporary musical after a Chorus Line? Rent.
Yeah.
There's one exception, which would be falsettos, but the music wasn't contemporary. But nevertheless, there's a direct line from from a Chorus Line to Rent. But the Chorus Line was my show, and I was in the car with just me and my dog on Saturday night, and I listened to the entire album from beginning to end and cried.
Have you ever been able to tell this to Donna McKechnie and Priscilla Lopez and the people who are still
I've been able to tell
active?
it. Well, I certainly, as you might remember, Priscilla worked for me when she was the mother in the Heights on Broadway for 3 years. So I love Priscilla Lopez, and how lucky are we that she's still doing shows?
So lucky.
Yeah.
And Donna too. Donna's still in Wicked now, I think.
Maybe,
right?
but I've
Yeah.
never had the pleasure of meeting Donna McKechnie. But I love Donna McKechnie. Donna McKechnie, I want to be Donna McKechnie. Can you name that show?
No, I cannot.
Come on.
I cannot. I get it. I fail musical theater right now.
Donna McKechnie, I want to be Donna McKechnie. Baby. Maltby and Shire, 1984. I win.
I was 3 years old. Okay, where can we connect with you online and get your book, Theater Kid?
Oh
memoir?
my gosh, right. So you can get my book if you are in the New York tri-state area at the Drama Bookshop. But of course, you can get my book at any Barnes & Noble or any of your local bookstores. Always support the local bookstore if you can. And then, of course, you can get it at barnesandnoble.com. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it anywhere online. You can listen to the audio that has 15 Broadway stars playing all the different parts in it, including Lindsay Mendez and Danny Burstein and Renee Goldsberry and Darren Criss and Chris Sieber and Annalie Ashford and Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's an amazing group. And I'm sure if you go to jeffreyseller.com, you could probably find a link to buy the book. But come on, we all know how to buy books.
We all know how to buy books. Yeah. Well, I'll link to it in the show notes as well. So check the show notes for this episode as you are listening. Oh, you can get me on all the socials on Thread, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Leave a rating and a review wherever you're listening. You can watch this now on Spotify or Patreon. Thanks to Jukebox the Ghost for the intro and outro music. Thanks to welcome-to-timesquare.com for the use of this lovely studio. And also check them out. And Jeffrey, thank you so much. This has truly been something I've been looking forward to for a long time.
Oh my
Thank
God,
you.
It was so fun. And thank you for hosting me on Broadway.
In the Broadways.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.